All right, so I'm going to refresh my phone screen to see if I see us in the group yet. We are in the group. So welcome to everybody who is watching us online. I am live here today with Phylis, and Phylis is with Designtech Interiors. I am so excited to talk with you today, Phylis, because I know you have a wealth of knowledge and so much experience in this industry.
Well, thank you, Barbara.
You are welcome.
That's flattering.
So Phylis, first, before we jump into all the great things you do, first tell us who you are as a person. Who's Phylis?
Oh, wow. I'm Phylis, and I am the owner for probably about 35 plus years of Designtech Interiors. Background, I went to design school right out of high school. I left the field for about 12 years, mainly because in the 70s and early 80s, if you wanted to be an interior, you got a degree in interior design. Now, do you want to sell draperies or wallpaper? Do you want to work at a furniture store, or do you want to work in the back room drafting or managing an architect's library? There weren't a lot of opportunities for designers back then. They were decorators, which I don't want to offend any doctors out there, but my late husband used to call them doctors' wives with a flair. and people tended to think you did it because you loved it. It was a hobby. You really don't have to make a living at it. So that's how I got started. So I literally left the field I loved and went to Purdue and got some experience in industrial engineering. I worked 2 years for a company that manufactured computers in their engineering estimating department. Then I went out to US Steel and was the first female field engineer in that department. Based out of the central maintenance machine shop, I did incentive plans for the union machinist. It was great experience because I'm as comfortable in a hard hat as I am in heels, probably more so. And I'm not intimidated by the carpenters and the electricians and so forth on a job site. I can go out and take charge. And so that experience was very valuable. Then around 1983, 84, the NCIDQ was formed, which was the National Council for Interior Design Qualification. They came up with a 2-day exam, very similar to what architects take. And you had to have not only an education, but some years of practice. And it was a 2-day test. It was very difficult. Very few people passed it on the first try. And it lends some professionalism. If you passed that test, you could call yourself a designer and not a decorator. Okay. And about that time, my husband was finished with college and he got a job with insurance. So I was free to leave US Steel if I wanted to. And so I left US Steel at the suggestion of a man from my church who owned a big construction company and gave me the task of putting 3 additions on Teeble's restaurant. That was my first job.
Nice.
And it took 9 months, and I said, okay, I should be doing this for a living. And so I resigned from US Steel. And my husband said, if you're going to do it right. Go take the test, get the certification, get the alphabet soup behind your name. So I spent, I'm going to say a year. It was at least 6 months doing nothing but practice projects on weekends and studying during the week. My children were 4 and 6 at the time, and they helped me study with flashcards and so on. And I passed it. And that's when I formed my own company. And for the first 15 years, maybe 20, all I did was commercial interiors. I did doctor's offices, restaurants, casinos, hotels. I didn't want to touch residential with a 10-foot pole.
Why is that?
I didn't have the patience. I didn't want to parade some wife through the merchandise mart with their mother-in-law and look at 47 fabrics. I wanted people whose time was as valuable as mine You know, doctors, lawyers, hotel people, they don't care what color the chair is. I don't tell them how to do their job. They don't tell me how to do mine. So with that said, I approached it from a very professional standpoint. Then around 2000, around 2004 through 2008, my life shifted. My husband died. My parents moved from Arizona to across the alley from me because they needed more help. And frankly, it was easier to tell a housewife I'm in the ER with my dad than to tell that to a board of directors. So I started taking on some residential. First, it was staging model homes for builders that I knew, doctors whose wives needed help and they knew me. And the residential grew. And then in 2008, when the big economic crunch hit, commercial just died on the vine, but people were still doing houses. Very similar to what's happening now with COVID-19, people are home and they're seeing their homes in a different light. And I'm able to help them make their home their sanctuary. So it evolved. I think I mellowed with age. Now I really enjoy residential. And my business right now is probably 50-50.
Okay. And how many years, I know you made reference to 15, 20 years. How many years now have you been in this business?
I started my company in 1985.
Okay, so I was born in 84, so you're looking at 35 years you've been in business
exactly.
now.
Exactly.
Wow. So you have as much knowledge just in this industry than I probably have in my whole life.
That's true, but as a lot of industries, it's ever changing. Once you pass the coveted NCIDQ exam, to stay certified, you have to have a certain number of CEUs or continuing education units every year. So I never stop learning, ever. I have to take classes in lighting and building codes, in ADA requirements. Now, you know, COVID has been kind of cool because before I always took them at NeoCon, at the Window Fashions Expo. I had to travel. I had to pay a lot of money to get my classes at, you know, conventions here and there. All of these are offering them right now free online. And a lot of days I'll have 3 back-to-back Zoom meetings, but I'm getting my credits. When the end of the year comes, I won't be scrambling like most years to get the credits I need to stay certified.
Fantastic. And Phyllis, I know that this COVID thing has helped you in a number of ways. So number one, it's helped you get your CEUs online and for free, right? But it's also given you the opportunity to do something that you've been wanting to do for a while anyway, right?
Right.
Tell us about that.
Yes, we're talking about e-design. I've never been a computer lover, mainly because it requires sitting still too much. I like to run around and I like people. I love networking events. But in October, I broke my shoulder and I was completely immobilized for 3 months. I couldn't drive. And so I started thinking, how in the world will I make a living if ever again I can't drive? So I started researching, and there's a lot of buzz in my industry right now with e-design, where you literally meet with clients via Zoom meetings, but you also create your drawings, create your renderings on the computer, screen share, present them via Zoom. And you can even in the questionnaire give people how do you measure a window? How do you do a floor plan? Now, granted, it's not going to be buildable architect's drawings. If you measure your living room and you tell me it's 10 by 15, we're not going to do custom cabinetry for that based on those numbers. I'm still going to send the tradespeople in to verify. But I can very easily do a floor plan, and some window treatment ideas and paint colors and lighting and furniture arrangements. I can do that without ever setting foot in the house. We do that by booking a Zoom meeting and answering a lot of questions and attaching photos. Take your smartphone. Everybody and their grandmother has a smartphone these days. Take pictures of the room, attach them, take measurements, send them all to me, and give me a couple days to put some ideas together. And then we have a Zoom meeting and I give you ideas. And I also give you a shoppable list, a specification list that tells you if you like the way this sofa looks and you want it, you call Darvin. You want this paint color, you call Sherwin-Williams, drive up to the curb, they'll put it in your car. Back in the day, I had a whole room of fabric samples and wallpaper samples. I don't do that, need that anymore, because if I pick out some things online, they'll FedEx them to me and I have them in 2 days.
Nice.
I can also ask them to FedEx a second copy directly to my client, and you and I can sit on a Zoom meeting and touch and feel the fabrics,
Okay.
which people want to do. They want to see the actual materials. And so by doing that, I've created the floor plan, I've created the boards, presentation boards, and I've created the renderings online and met with you via Zoom and sent you the touchy-feely part. And you can make the decisions without ever putting your shoes on and leaving the house.
That's so awesome, because I know that for many people who are home right now,
Right.
you know, who've been home for like 6 to 8 weeks, and many people are finding that there are things in their house that, you know, they didn't know looked that bad, or they didn't know needed organized, or they didn't know needed a revamp, right? And they're seeing these things now, and as they, you know, as their husbands and wives and children are all home as well, and everybody's starting to make this new lifestyle, it also is a new time to say, is our house effectively doing what we need it to do? I know that I've had to create a whole new office in my home during COVID.
Right. And I think that it's going to go forward even after we're, you know, released into the wild again. I think that employers are going to take a hard look at their business and they're going to say, do I really need $100 a square foot in a high rise downtown for 100 employees? Or can I have the people who meet with people in conference rooms downtown? And can I have the secretarial pool? Can I have the customer service? You know, the people who now work in cube farms, they're busily putting plexiglass up and trying to social distance them by 6 feet apart, but real estate's expensive. And why would I pay for the 6 feet between people? And so I think once we go back, people are going to say, hey, my customer service people have been working just fine from home. Let's continue. I don't have to provide company cars. I don't have to reimburse people mileage. They're doing just fine, and people are going to adjust. Well, when that happens, the person who's now customer service from home versus in a cube farm, they're going to need a designated place to work. Doing this from your dining room table is fine for a day or two. It's not fine for even a month or two, because you have to put it all away when you eat and so forth. So I think there's going to be less of a demand for laying out 100 cubicles and more of a demand for creating home office spaces for people.
That's fantastic. So now you're doing both commercial and residential opportunities in this e-design, right?
I actually have never done a commercial project in e-design.
Okay.
I have not.
Willing to, if somebody were interested?
I could very easily do it, because let's say they're going to do something in their office. They can email me the CAD file and I can download it into the e-design platform and I can space plan it. I can choose colors. I can do all that via eDesign. Yes, I could do that. But I think right now I haven't gotten any calls for new commercial projects since this started, because I think that they're going to think long and hard before they, buy 300 desks, because will they in fact need them?
Right.
Think
That's
of
a good
all
point.
the professions that people could do from home. Dispatch. Years ago, I had a residential client out in the Joliet area. And I went into her house, and I don't really remember her first name. All I know is it really wasn't Julie. It was Mary, Barbara, I don't know. And I walked into her house to help her redo a family room. And in the corner of the family room was a desk with two computer monitors. And the lady was all comfy in her jeans and her house slippers. And her phone rang, and she said, "Just a minute, I have to get this." And she ran to the computers and she pulled up these maps and so on. And when she came back to me, I said, "Well, what is it you do?" She said, "I'm Julie. Do you know all the signs along the expressway called Julie before you dig?" She
Yeah,
was Julie.
now I
She
get it.
wasn't the only Julie, but she had started this when her children were young. They were grown. She'd been doing this for 20 some years and loved it. She was, doing this before COVID. And when people decide to dig, and she tracks where the utility lines were and gives them the yay or the nay. And
Nice.
was paid very well for doing this, I might add.
From home. How neat.
Yes. So I know that you always envisioned a whole, cubicle farm full of people taking those calls, but that's not really the case. And how many in the last month or so, I've made calls to insurance companies and this and that on family members' behalf, and they tell me, "Well, I'm working from home."
I've actually had that too. I've even called some support for like some of the things I do in my business.
Yes.
And we've had to call some support stuff, and I've heard dogs barking. And so I would just ask the people, "Are you working from home?" And they'd say, "Yeah, ever since COVID started, I've been working from home." And some people even before COVID, like it's not just because of COVID, but I was surprised that a lot of people who take service calls actually aren't always in a cubicle.
And I've acquired not only the little consultations, but I've acquired 3 good sized residential projects where we're moving walls and everything, and without setting foot. Now, granted, one was a lady who I did all of her window treatments 20 years ago. So I've been in her house, but it's been a long time. And now she wants a bathroom totally remodeled. And I sent my carpenter out to take the measurements and take the pictures. And because construction people are considered essential, and I sent him into her home wearing a mask, I wasn't comfortable physically going in because of the fact that I care for my 91-year-old mother and my daughter who's had countless surgeries lately. So I just didn't want to bring any bugs home to them.
Smart idea. So Phyllis, I have a few questions left before we
Sure.
get off. All right. A while back, early when you and I first met, you told me this story that I want you to tell to the viewers. It was the one about how like having a pink kitchen. Do you remember that story?
Yes.
Okay, tell us that story.
Well, for the last several years, I do like public speaking, and I do a talk before groups on color psychology. That's something that's always fascinated me, that what determines your color palette has a lot more to do with what you like and what you don't like. And the pink kitchen story resonates with a lot of people. You should never have a pink kitchen unless you're anorexic, because think about candy stores and Baskin Robbins and carbs and sweets. Pink makes you crave sugary, fatty foods. It just does. And there was this history. First of all, there's a color marketing group, and they go from the fashion industry and they make projections about 2 years in advance as to what will be trendy. And as you know, there's certain years that the only thing you can buy in the store is golden avocado, or blue and mauve, or we've all been there. You can always tell what year a woman got married in by what color her crock pot is. Always. My age group, they still have the green and gold. They still work. Why replace them? You probably have kind of a mauve or a light blue kind of thing. And I mean, it's funny. And so what happened was in the 40s, World War II was going on. And kitchens then were kind of gray and red and white. And the 50s hit. The year I was born, 1954, that was the first era of the stay-home moms. Rosie the Riveter was being forced out of the workplace by all the soldiers coming home from World War II, and they were literally the first generation of stay-home moms. Before that, there were mom and pop stores and businesses, and the wives raised children, yes, but they also worked on the farm or worked in the store. But suddenly you had these men coming back from World War II, buying new homes, making good money, and their wives were staying home and, being PTA moms for the first time. And up until that point, there were a lot of men coming back hooked on cigarettes because MREs in World War II had 3 little cigarettes in the package with the candy bar, Hershey bars, and the treats, and in the military. And so R.J. Reynolds Tobacco got this brilliant idea. All the men smoked. It was the cool thing to do. They all wanted to look like James Dean. But girls just didn't smoke at the time. So what they did was they pushed pink kitchens, pink Rubbermaid, pink walls, pink everything. And all these moms would send the kids off to school and they'd bake cookies. And they'd get together with their friends and have coffee and cookies. And the kids would come home and they'd bake cakes. Betty Crocker was in her heyday. Weight Watchers was founded in 1954 because the women were home and cooking and packing on the pounds. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, and R.J. Reynolds launched a big campaign, have a cigarette and not a cookie. And they sucked in an entire generation. By the time you were born, mom smoked as often as dad smoked. And that was not the case before the mid-50s. And that way they captured a whole new generation, so to speak. That was before the Surgeon General's warning, which was in the 60s. So they were offering this as an alternative to eating coffee cake,
So I find that story fascinating because obviously in the field of marketing, I know how important that your marketing message is, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that they crafted that message so perfectly that allowed our cigarettes better than cookies, I doubt it, right? Probably neither of them are better or good at all, right? But their message gave you the impression that this is better than what you're currently doing, right? Have a cigarette instead of a cookie. And it gave people the perception that it was healthier and better, even though we know now that it isn't. And I don't know if they knew then that it wasn't, but it was basically like trading one addiction for another, really. Exactly.
And do you remember the story I told you about yellow nurseries?
Yes, tell that one too.
Prior to this 2 generations ago, the only people that had an ultrasound were people that were really in some kind of physical problems. When I had my children, you didn't know till you went in the delivery room if it was a boy or a girl. It just wasn't a normal thing. Now people know by day 1, they have gender reveal parties, but back then it wasn't the case. And so people would decorate the nursery. Well, I can't put my boy in a pink room or my girl in a blue room. What works? Yellow. A few creative people went with gray or mint green, but most of the time, yellow. Yellow ducks, Sesame Street, yellow nurseries. And they found out that the color yellow in an infant will trigger colic. So they wondered why the babies threw up and screamed all the time. It was the yellow nursery.
Isn't that amazing how color does so much? And that's one of the areas I know that you and I both understand well, right? Because you know
Right.
color when it goes to design. And I'm constantly teaching people about color with logo, right? Like people will come in and want their favorite color incorporated into their logo. And I have to say, no, you want to focus your logo based upon what your brand represents and what you want people to feel when they approach your brand, right? And same thing with you when you're designing these rooms. It's not necessarily what my favorite color is, but what I want to feel in that room, how I want to use that room, right? And so
Right. You should always have some element of red in a dining room.
really, why is that?
It makes food look better. It just makes food look better. And there's two shades of red, though. If you think about it, your restaurants where you're going to stay a while, have another drink, order dessert, always have a deeper maroon. Think about maroon banquettes, leather seats. A deeper red makes you want to relax and stay a while. Therefore, put that in your formal dining room to make your guests feel comfortable. But fast food restaurants, take Denny's, take McDonald's, you don't want people to stay a while. You want to turn those tables. So with that said, you use more yellow reds or oranges because then they eat and get out the door. So in the home where you want the kids to get their breakfast and not miss the school bus, such as the breakfast nook, you use oranger reds and use the bluer reds in the formal areas.
Interesting. That is really neat. All right, Phyllis, I see that we're coming up on quite a bit of time we've shared together today. Thank you so much for sharing this stuff. Before we go, I want our viewers to be able to reach you if they have more questions or if they want to hear more of your amazing stories about different colors. So what is the best way for people to reach you?
Just visit my website, designtechinteriors.com.
Awesome. And on your website, they have the option to contact you in different ways. And they also have the option to schedule e-design, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. Any last words you'd like to say?
I don't think so. Just thank you, Barbara, for the opportunity and let me know anything I can do to help.
Thank you, Phyllis. Have a great weekend.